This video is sponsored by Stamps.com, the service I've been using to print postage right from my home. To sign up for it without any long-term commitments or contracts, all you have to do is go to Stamps.com/companyman for a special offer that includes a 4-week trial, free postage, and a free digital scale. The link is in the description. Red Lobster has become iconic. It has been America's largest chain of casual dining seafood restaurants for my entire life, and probably for most of the people watching this. It's one of those brands that feels like it has always been there and will always be there, so when news came out recently about the company potentially filing for bankruptcy, it was concerning. If nothing else, those reports help prove how much people still care about Red Lobster. Everyone started talking about it, including many people that have asked me to make this video. Now, I already made a video about Red Lobster. It was almost 5 years ago, and people responded pretty well to it. The company itself even left a comment under it, part of which said, "Red Lobster has certainly grown over the years, and we're not done yet. There are lots of new and exciting things on the horizon." I wouldn't say that statement has aged very well, because in that video, I expressed how Red Lobster had already been having trouble for multiple decades, and following it, things have just continued getting worse. I don't even know where to start here. They were affected by the pandemic, of course. That certainly contributed to lower sales and greater uncertainty for the future. In 2020, their credit rating was downgraded to a negative outlook, meaning it became unlikely that they would be able to keep up with their debt payments. That same year, there was a controversial change in ownership, followed by multiple changes in leadership. When I made that last video, the same person had been serving as CEO of the company for well over a decade. Well, in 2021, when he retired, he was replaced with a woman who left the company within a year to take over as CEO of Denny's. She didn't provide a reason, only saying it was an incredibly difficult but necessary decision. They went well over a year without naming a permanent replacement before finally hiring someone in September of 2023 who also left after just a few months, being replaced by someone who has been identified as a restructuring expert. They have been heavily involved in the bankruptcy filings of Quiznos, Crystals, and Kona Grill in the past, and it makes sense that they would hire him as they potentially approach their own bankruptcy. Red Lobster has been closing locations. Not many of them so far, but potentially more in the future. It's hard to tell. Overall, I would say it is unlikely that Red Lobster will be going away anytime soon. It remains a strong brand with elements that a lot of people still very much seem to enjoy, but at the same time, you can see how incredibly unstable it has been. Red Lobster has had 5 separate owners throughout their 50+ year history, so for this video, I think it would be interesting to look at each of these owners and highlight some of the more significant ways that they have helped grow, shape, or even harm the brand. Starting off in 1968, when the company was founded by Bill Darden. He is kind of a legend in the food service industry, having started at 19 years old when he opened a small lunch counter during the Great Depression called the Green Frog. You have to respect the fact that he refused to segregate the restaurant based on race, which was a bold stance back in 1930s Georgia. Over the years, he went on to own and operate various other restaurants, the most applicable one here being Gary's Duck Inn, a seafood restaurant in Orlando, Florida that he bought in 1963. I say it was applicable because operating it made him realize the high demand in the area for seafood. 5 years later, he opened the first ever Red Lobster, which we have to believe was a callback to his original diner, the Green Frog, being that's a color followed by an animal. It was so successful that there was by far more demand than he could possibly keep up with. He opened 2 more of them, but it became overwhelming, so after only 2 years, he sold it to a large company called General Mills. He did it because they had the resources to help Red Lobster reach its full potential of becoming a national chain. And I know that deal might sound random because General Mills is widely known for making breakfast cereal, but they have in fact done much more than that over the years. And here it had recently acquired the Gordon's Fish brand, so at that point in time, more than 10% of their sales were already coming from seafood. Plus, their longtime rival Pillsbury had bought Burger King a few years earlier, so the acquisition made enough sense being a response to that, and General Mills quickly became one of the biggest companies in the restaurant industry, growing Red Lobster into a popular, respectable chain by emphasizing quality control of the food that they served, as well as the training of the managers and the staff within the restaurants. It is hard to deny that General Mills was by far the most impactful of the 5 owners, growing the chain from 3 to 715 locations during their 25-year stretch as owners, and introducing some of their most successful menu items and promotions. In the 1970s, they claimed to have invented popcorn shrimp. Shrimp itself was gaining popularity throughout the country, so they put breading on it and fried it in a way that proved to be delicious, and 50 years later continues to draw customers into their restaurants. In the 1980s, they started Lobster Fest, and in the 1990s, they introduced what has to be my favorite part of the Red Lobster experience, Cheddar Bay biscuits. They make them in the restaurant by hand every 15 minutes using a secret recipe involving quality aged cheddar and a savory garlic topping. I highly recommend you try them if you have not already, but you probably have, considering they make almost 1 million of them every day. At first, they were given to people in the lobby waiting to be seated, but they proved to be so popular that they started serving them at the tables. It is kind of like the equivalent of how Olive Garden gives you breadsticks, and that is a fitting comparison because Olive Garden was started by General Mills in the 1980s as a complement to Red Lobster. I'm not going to get sidetracked there, but in 1995, General Mills wanted to focus back on their cereals and consumer foods, so they spun off their restaurant segment into its own company called Darden Restaurants. Founder of Red Lobster, Bill Darden, had recently passed away, so logically they named the new company after him because Red Lobster was by far the biggest part of it. This right here is when Red Lobster really started declining. You could argue that they weren't given the proper attention from the parent company, focusing more on Olive Garden and the other smaller concepts, but probably the single biggest explanation that I can get behind it is competition. Red Lobster became an older, outdated brand, while newer competing brands like Bonefish Grill emerged as attractive alternatives. Also, fast casual concepts like Chipotle became popular and drew customers away from the more classic casual dining concepts. Even Olive Garden has had trouble over that time, but still proved to be much more promising than Red Lobster. So in a twist of events, in 2014, Darden Restaurants, again named after Bill Darden, sold Red Lobster. The price was $2.1 billion, a lot of which they used to pay off debt, and they wanted to get rid of it so they can better focus their efforts on Olive Garden. The buyer of it was an investment firm called Golden Gate Capital. The deal made Red Lobster part of a private company, so it's unclear exactly how much debt was added through the transaction, but Bloomberg has referred to it as a leveraged buyout, so that certainly didn't help their situation. I don't have too much to say about Golden Gate Capital because they weren't the owners for too long, and it doesn't look like anything too significant happened during that short time. In 2016, a seafood company called Tai Union bought a minority stake in Red Lobster, and then in 2020 led an investment group that acquired the rest of it, officially making them the new majority owner. If you're not familiar with Tai Union, they were already the owner of multiple seafood brands, the most recognizable one for me being Chicken of the Sea tuna that they had bought in the 1990s. They also tried to buy Bumblebee tuna in 2014, but abandoned the deal due to antitrust concerns. Tai Union has a scandalous history involving connections to slavery that you may want to look further into, but when it comes to Red Lobster, I think they have been panicking, and here's my guess as to what has been happening. I think almost anyone would agree that Red Lobster is not what it used to be. It is not an exciting, growing brand, and hasn't been that way for about 30 years now. They have struggled and downsized a little bit as customers gravitate toward newer options, but there is still very much a place for them in the market. People love those Cheddar Bay biscuits and whatever other seafood. You can tell I'm stuck on those biscuits. My point is, when you go to Red Lobster, you know exactly what to expect. Probably something very similar to every other time you have ever been there before. To my knowledge, their last truly successful introduction was Endless Shrimp 20 years ago. Things have mostly leveled off, around $2.5 billion in sales coming from almost 700 restaurants, but that buyout in 2014 seemingly complicated things by adding debt to the company. High interest payments likely hurt their margins, and then the pandemic hurt sales, and then higher labor costs and lease payments helped bring them into the negative, putting them in a situation where they were paying out more money than they were bringing in, making it necessary to raise their sales. But that is difficult to do at such a classic, predictable restaurant. I think that is where they start to panic, because they don't have a great way to do it. They keep hiring new CEOs with new plans. They did raise traffic by 4% when they started offering Endless Shrimp for $20 year-round. That is not a bad deal, but the price was too low and they ended up losing millions of dollars from it. They also tried this free Endless Lobster promotion at their Times Square location for one day as another attempt to raise awareness and make the brand more relevant, but I can't imagine that led to anything significant. All their attempts have either backfired or gone mostly unnoticed. In early 2023, Tai Union assured that they were committed to turning things around, but about a year later, they expressed that they wanted to exit the business entirely by selling their portion of it, recording an impairment settlement charge of $530 million. I think it's wild that their CEO has even said that he's going to stop eating lobster, so that really sounds like they have had an awful experience and are ready to give up on it. The potential bankruptcy would help out with their debt and lease agreements and hopefully provide some stability. I feel like Red Lobster just needs to get to a point financially where they can just be themselves, operating their existing restaurants for their existing customer base, and everyone can slow down and finally relax. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about Red Lobster? Are they a fun place to go with your family, maybe for a birthday or special occasion, or do you not go there much because you don't like the food or the pricing, or maybe just feel like there are better options out there? Quite honestly, this is one of my favorite stories to talk about because it just has all the elements. I did the best I could to avoid overlap with my previous video by focusing more on the decline, the updates from the past 5 years, and different facts, while still telling a somewhat comprehensive story, so I still think there's value in watching that other one as well if you want to continue hearing about Red Lobster. Finally, what do you see for the future? Do you think they're going to pull it together and hang in there, or are they going to be gone soon? Things have been so uncertain lately that I feel like anything can happen. And any other thoughts you have about Red Lobster, leave them in the comments. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Stamps.com is today's sponsor, and for anyone out there who has to do a lot of mailing and shipping, sending out checks, invoices, legal documents, I would consider this to be a no-brainer. Running a business and not utilizing Stamps.com is a lot like going to Red Lobster and not eating the Cheddar Bay biscuits. I mean, what are you even doing at that point? It allows you to take care of mailing and shipping wherever you are, even on the go, with the Stamps.com mobile app. It is like having a post office in your pocket, but even better because there is no lines, no traffic, and no waiting whatsoever. It helps make your business more efficient, so you could spend time elsewhere, focusing on bigger decisions. That is where your time should be spent, not standing in a post office. And these are rates that you cannot find anywhere else, like up to 89% off USPS and UPS. To sign up, simply go to stamps.com/companyman to get a 4-week trial, free postage, and a digital scale. All you have to do is click the link that is in the description. Thank you for watching.